Taeyang watched as Sumin set up an ambush at a junction. She moved the station's chronometer showed 6 hours had passed since the attack began, but time had lost meaning in the red-lit corridors. The cubs sat in their small room, eyes fixed on the security monitors, watching their human instructors transform into something out of nightmare. Every screen showed a different angle of the old section, and on each one, death moved with quiet efficiency. Hyunwoo had not spoken in 3 hours. He moved through the corridors like liquid shadow, appearing where mercenaries did not expect, disappearing before they could respond. His breathing remained controlled, his movements precise. He was not tired. He was not slowing down. If anything, he seemed to grow more dangerous as time passed. How was he not exhausted? One of the cubs whispered. They had all pushed themselves to their limits before, knew the feeling of muscles burning, of lungs demanding rest. Hyunwoo had been in constant motion for hours, fighting, moving, setting traps, and he showed no signs of fatigue. Ji-won, monitoring the feeds while checking her medical supplies for the 3rd time, answered without looking away from the screens. Human endurance. We evolved to move all day, every day. Persistence hunting required our ancestors to track prey for days without meaningful rest. 6 hours is nothing. On the screen, Sumin had taken position in a ventilation shaft, her small frame fitting easily into spaces the larger mercenaries could not reach. She watched through a grate as a squad passed below her, then dropped silently behind them. Her knife took 2 of them before the others realized they were under attack. By the time they turned, she was already climbing back into the vent. She is barely 20 years old, Taeyang said, his voice hollow. How can someone so young fight like this? She is human, Ji-won replied simply. On Earth, we train our young in survival from childhood. Not because we want warriors, but because our world is dangerous. Sumin has been doing endurance training since she was 12, combat training since 15. She is young by human standards, but she has been preparing for survival her entire life. Minho's claws scraped against the metal floor. Your species is terrifying. Ji-won finally looked at him, and her expression was gentle despite the violence playing out on the screens. We are also kind, creative, compassionate. We build beautiful things. We create art and music. We care for our young with devotion that would seem excessive to most species. Being apex predators does not define us. It is simply one part of what we are. A new voice crackled over the mercenary channel they had hacked. The commander, and he sounded shaken. All units fall back to the main corridor. We regroup now. I repeat, fall back now. We are taking too many casualties. The cubs watched as scattered mercenaries tried to retreat. But Hyunwoo had predicted this. Every fallback route led through his prepared kill zones. Doors that locked remotely, trapping mercenaries in sections. Lights that cut out at crucial moments. Atmosphere vents that released disorienting gas. He is hurting them, Taeyang realized. Like prey. Yes, Ji-won confirmed. He is forcing them to move where he wants them to move. They think they are retreating to safety, but they are actually walking into the most dangerous areas. One squad made it to what they thought was a secure junction. They took defensive positions, weapons trained on all approaches. They did not look up. Hyunwoo dropped from the ceiling like a striking snake. The fight was over in seconds. The mercenaries had armor, training, superior firepower. None of it mattered. Hyunwoo moved through them like they were standing still, every strike targeting vulnerable points. Neural clusters in the neck, joints in the armor, weak points that only someone with extensive knowledge of alien physiology would know. Ji-won taught him those spots, Minho said, understanding dawning. You showed him where each species is most vulnerable. I am a doctor, Ji-won said quietly. I know how bodies work, how they break. Hyunwoo asked me to share that knowledge because he wanted to end fights quickly, with minimal suffering. Clean kills are more merciful than prolonged combat. The cubs did not know how to respond to that. The idea that this brutal efficiency was actually a form of mercy seemed impossible, yet they could see the truth of it. Every mercenary that fell did so quickly without prolonged suffering. The mercenary commander's voice came through again, and this time, fear colored his words. We have lost contact with Squads 3, 7, and 9. Squads 4 and 6 are reporting heavy casualties. Whatever is down there, it is picking us off one by one. Sir, we need to abort, another voice pleaded. This was supposed to be a simple capture operation. We are fighting something that knows this station better than we do, that has home advantage, that is not playing by any rules we understand. "We have superior numbers," the commander insisted, but he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. "We can overwhelm them through sheer force." That was when Sumin made her move. The cubs watched as she emerged from the shadows behind a group of 4 mercenaries who were guarding one of the main access points. She did not engage them directly. Instead, she threw something small into their midst. A homemade flashbang created from training supplies. The explosion blinded and deafened them, and in their confusion, Sumin struck, but she was not trying to kill them. She was targeting their communication equipment. Within 30 seconds, she had disabled the communications gear of all 4 mercenaries, then disappeared back into the corridors. The mercenaries, unable to see clearly and now cut off from their command structure, began to panic. "Brilliant," Jiwon breathed, watching the screen with professional appreciation. She is not just fighting them. She is breaking their cohesion. No communications means no coordination. No coordination means they become isolated targets. The strategy worked. Across the old section, mercenaries found themselves cut off from their comrades, alone in hostile territory, facing an enemy they could not predict. Some tried to retreat toward the entrance. Others hunkered down and hoped to wait out the attack. A few, the most experienced, tried to fight their way toward what they thought was safety. None of these strategies worked against opponents who simply would not stop hunting. Another hour passed. The cubs watched as the mercenary force, which had entered the old section with confidence and superior numbers, was systematically dismantled. Not through overwhelming force, but through patience, planning, and ruthless efficiency. 14 mercenaries have been killed, Jiwon reported, monitoring the feeds. Another 23 have been incapacitated or have fled the section. The remaining forces are scattered and disorganized. "How many were there at the start?" Taeyang asked. "Approximately 45 in the assault force that entered this section," Jiwon replied, "plus additional forces securing other parts of the station." The cubs absorbed this information in stunned silence. 2 humans, one of them barely adult, had fought 45 armed and armored mercenaries and were winning. Not through superior firepower or armor or natural advantages, but through tactics, knowledge of terrain, and sheer refusal to be defeated. The security feed showed Hyunwoo standing in a corridor checking his weapon. He looked tired now, finally showing some sign of the hours of combat. But his hands were steady, his breathing controlled. And most terrifyingly to the cubs, his expression was calm. Not triumphant, not angry, not afraid. Just calm, like this was simply a task that needed completing. A sound drew everyone's attention. Heavy footsteps approaching their hiding place. Many of them, Jiwon immediately moved to the door, her weapon raised. "Stay behind me," she ordered the cubs, and there was command in her voice that they obeyed without thinking. The door burst open, and for a moment everyone froze. A squad of 7 mercenaries stood in the doorway. Weapons pointed into the room. They saw the cubs huddled in the back. They saw Jiwon with her weapon, and they saw their opportunity. "Perfect," the lead mercenary said, his translator converting his words to Galactic Common. "We take the cubs and the doctor. Use them as leverage to draw out the others." Jiwon's response was immediate. She fired 3 times, precise shots that took down the mercenaries at the front of the formation. Then she moved, not backward toward safety, but forward into the doorway, using the fallen bodies as cover. The cubs had seen Hyunwoo fight. They had watched Sumin's efficiency, but watching Jiwon, their gentle medical officer who had treated their injuries and listened to their concerns, transform into a lethal combatant was shocking in a different way. She fought with the same calculated precision as the others, but her targets were different. She did not kill unless necessary. Instead, she aimed for limbs, for joints, for weapon hands, disabling shots that would incapacitate without killing. Even in combat, she was still a doctor trying to minimize death. But she was also absolutely terrifyingly effective. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it ended, 4 mercenaries were down and 3 had fled back into the corridor. Jiwon secured the door, then immediately began checking the fallen mercenaries for injuries. "You saved them," Minho said in disbelief, watching her apply pressure to a wound on one of the mercenaries. "They tried to hurt us, and you are saving them." Jiwon looked up and her expression was complex. "I am a doctor. I kill when I must to protect my patients, but I save lives when I can. That is what being human me." The alarm woke them in the dead of night cycle. Not the sharp emergency klaxon from before, but a low, pulsing tone that somehow felt more ominous. Taeyang jerked awake in his bunk, his enhanced hearing picking up sounds that made his fur stand on end. Weapons fire, distant screams, the heavy thud of explosions echoing through the station's superstructure. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. "Everyone up," Minho called out, already moving toward the door. The other cubs scrambled from their bunks, instincts screaming danger. Taeyang's claws had already extended, his body responding to threats he could sense but not yet see. The door to their quarters slid open, and Hyunwoo stood there with Sumin beside him. Both humans were dressed in dark clothing, their faces grim. Ji-won appeared moments later carrying medical supplies and a sidearm that looked too large for her small frame. "We need to move now," Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying absolute command. "Stay close, stay quiet, and do exactly as I say." "What is happening?" Taeyang asked. "The mercenaries are back," Ji-won said, checking her weapon with practiced efficiency. "More of them this time. They have cut the main power, disabled communications, and they are sweeping the station level by level." "How many?" Minho demanded. "At least 40, Hyunwoo replied. "Maybe more. They have come prepared. EMP weapons, heavy armor, military-grade equipment." He looked at each cub in turn. "They are not here just for you anymore. They want me." The cubs understood immediately. Word must have spread about what happened during the first attack. A human who could kill 6 armed mercenaries alone would be valuable to certain groups. Military contractors, private armies, criminal organizations. The market for skilled killers was vast and profitable. "Station security?" Sumin asked. "Scattered or dead," Hyunwoo said flatly. "We saw bodies on our way here. The mercenaries hit the security stations first. We are on our own." They moved through the darkened corridors, Hyunwoo leading with Sumin watching their rear. The cubs stayed in the middle, their superior senses picking up sounds and scents the humans could not detect. Twice they encountered bodies. Station personnel who had been cut down trying to reach safety. Hyunwoo paused at each one only long enough to confirm there was nothing to be done, then kept moving. "Where are we going?" Taeyang whispered. "The lower training levels," Hyunwoo replied. "The old sections that were built when this station was constructed. The mercenaries will expect us to try to reach escape pods or barricade ourselves in secure areas. They will not expect us to go deeper into the station." "Why not?" one of the cubs asked. Hyunwoo glanced back, and in the red emergency lighting his expression was almost predatory. "Because humans do not run from threats. We make the threats run from us." They reached a maintenance shaft, and Hyunwoo pried open the access panel. The space beyond was dark and cramped, barely large enough for the massive Vakesh cubs to squeeze through. "Inside," he ordered. We climbed down 3 levels. The descent was difficult. The cubs struggled with the narrow shaft, their bulk making every movement awkward. The humans, smaller and more flexible, moved with ease. Taeyang found himself marveling at how naturally Sumin navigated the tight space. Her slight frame an advantage rather than a weakness in this environment. They emerged into a section of the station that felt ancient. The walls were older metal, scarred with age and maintenance. The air was stale, the lighting units dim and flickering. This was the original core of the station, built decades ago and largely abandoned when newer sections were added. "Defensive positions," Hyunwoo said, and suddenly his tone was different. Not a teacher anymore, but a soldier giving orders in a combat zone. "Ji-won, secure the medical supplies in the back room. Sumin, survey the access points and report. Cubs with me." They followed him deeper into the level. Hyunwoo moved through the space with purpose, examining every corridor, every junction, every room. His eyes tracked sight lines, measured distances, evaluated cover and concealment. "This is perfect," he said, and there was something cold in his voice. "Multiple access points, but all of them are choke points. Limited sight lines. Lots of cover. And they do not know the layout like we will." Minho's ears twitched forward. "Instructor, are we hiding here?" "No," Hyunwoo said, and when he turned to face them, the cubs saw the predator again. The apex that wore human skin. "We are not hiding. We are preparing a killing ground." The next 2 hours were a revelation. The cubs watched as Hyunwoo transformed the abandoned section into a nightmare maze. He used maintenance supplies, old equipment, anything he could find. He created traps using the station's own systems. Doors that would lock remotely. Atmosphere vents that could be triggered to create blinding steam. Gravity plating that could be adjusted to throw off balance and aim. Sumin worked with equal efficiency, her small hands moving quickly to rig motion sensors from old security equipment. Ji-won used her medical knowledge in reverse, identifying points in armor that would be vulnerable, areas of the body that could be incapacitated with minimal force. "You want us to fight with you," Taeyang said, watching this preparation with growing dread. "No," Hyunwoo replied. "I want you to stay in the back room with Ji-won. You are not ready for this kind of fighting." "We are warriors," Minho protested. "We have trained our entire lives." Hyunwoo stopped what he was doing and faced the cubs directly. "You have trained for honor combat, for trials of strength, for the warrior traditions of your people. What is about to happen here is not that. This is not about honor or strength. This is about survival through any means necessary. This is about killing before you are killed, using every dirty trick and unfair advantage available." He gestured to the traps they had set. "This is human warfare. No rules, no honor. Just survival. And you are not ready for it." Taeyang felt his pride sting, but he also remembered the first attack. The efficient brutality with which Hyunwoo had eliminated the mercenaries. This was not boasting. This was fact. "We will stay with Ji-won," he said, and the other cubs reluctantly agreed. They retreated to the back room, a small space that had once been a storage area. Ji-won had set up her medical supplies and arranged the room to treat potential casualties. A small monitor showed feeds from the improvised security system Sumin had rigged. "Watch and learn," Ji-won said quietly, adjusting the monitor. "This is what humans do when cornered." On the screen, they could see Hyunwoo and Sumin moving through the corridors, making final adjustments to their preparations. Then both humans found concealed positions and went still, perfectly, absolutely still, waiting. "How long will they wait?" Minho whispered. "As long as necessary," Ji-won replied. "Patience is a human survival trait. We can wait for hours, days if needed, barely moving. Persistent predators do not rush." Time passed with agonizing slowness. The cubs' enhanced hearing picked up sounds from the levels above. Heavy footfalls, commands being barked in various alien languages. The mercenaries were searching methodically, moving through the station level by level. It took them 4 hours to reach the old section. The cubs watched through the security feed as the first squad entered. 6 heavily armed mercenaries in full combat armor, weapons raised, moving in textbook formation. They advanced cautiously into the darkened corridor, their helmet lights cutting through the gloom. Hyunwoo let them get halfway down the corridor before he triggered the first trap. The gravity plating under their feet reversed for 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds, but it was enough. The mercenaries were thrown upward, crashed into the ceiling, then slammed back down as gravity reasserted. Before they could recover, steam erupted from the vents, filling the corridor with scalding vapor. Hyunwoo emerged from concealment like a ghost. He moved through the disoriented squad with clinical precision. Not shooting, not making noise, using a combat knife, striking weak points in armor, eliminating targets before they could call for help. 6 mercenaries down in less than 20 seconds. The cubs stared at the screen in horrified fascination. "He is not fighting them," Taeyang whispered. "He is hunting them." "Yes," Ji-won said. "Now you understand," the pattern repeated. Squad after squad entered the old section, and each time Hyunwoo and Sumin used the environment against them. They triggered traps, cut off escape routes, attacked from unexpected angles. They did not fight fair. They fought to kill efficiently and quickly. The mercenary commander finally realized what was happening. The cubs could hear his voice over the mercenaries' communication channel, which Sumin had hacked into. "Pull back," he ordered. "Regroup. We are being picked off. Someone set traps. This is not a rescue mission anymore. This is a hunt and we are the prey." But pulling back was not easy. Hyunwoo had designed the space so that every escape route was also a kill zone. The mercenaries had come deeper into the section thinking they were hunting. Now they were scattered in small groups, lost in corridors they did not know, facing an enemy they could not predict. "Sir, we need to leave." One mercenary's voice came through the speakers. "This is not worth it. That human, whoever he is going to kill us all. We have superior numbers and firepower." The commander snapped. "Find them and finish this. That was his mistake." Humans did not care about superior numbers. They cared about winning. Their instructor was not prey pretending to be predator. He was apex predator pretend, and training resumed the following week, but everything had changed. The cubs arrived early, their previous arrogance replaced with wary respect. They stood in perfect formation when Hyunwoo entered the hall, their attention focused completely on their instructor. The mockery and dismissive comments had vanished as if they had never existed. Hyunwoo noticed the change immediately, and something like sadness crossed his features before he masked it with his usual calm expression. "Today we begin a different kind of training," he said. "Forget what you know about combat. Forget your claws, your armor, your natural advantages. Today I teach you the human way." Minho's ears twitched forward. "What is the human way, instructor?" "Adaptation," Hyunwoo said simply. "When a human faces a stronger opponent, we do not try to match their strength. We find another way. We use tools, terrain, psychology. We turn their advantages against them." He gestured to the training equipment scattered around the hall. "Everything can be a weapon if you know how to use it." He picked up a length of cord used for equipment maintenance. "This is not a weapon by design, but in human hands it becomes one. A garrote, a tripwire, a binding. Context changes everything." The cubs watched as he demonstrated dozens of uses for ordinary objects. A nutrition bar wrapper became a cutting tool when folded correctly. A water bottle became a club or a throwing weapon. Even the training mats could be used to blind, trip, or entangle an opponent. "You rely on what you were born with," Hyunwoo said. "Humans rely on what we can create. That is our strength." They spent hours learning to see the environment as humans did. Every object was potential. Every surface was either advantage or disadvantage depending on how it was used. The cubs, who had spent their lives trusting in their natural weapons, found this way of thinking alien and difficult. But they learned. The real shock came 3 days later when a transport arrived with a new student. The docking alert showed a human designation, and the cubs gathered at the viewport to watch the arrival with nervous curiosity. The airlock opened, and a young human woman stepped through. She stood barely 5.5 feet tall, her frame slight even by human standards. Her black hair was tied back in a practical style, and she carried a single travel pack. She looked impossibly fragile compared to the massive Vakesh cubs. Her name was Sumin, and she was a cadet from Earth's Training Academy, assigned to the station for cross-cultural combat experience. "This is dangerous," Minho said quietly as they watched her navigate the station corridors with station personnel. "She should not be here. She will be hurt." Taeyang said nothing, but he remembered Hyunwoo's words about humans and death worlds. He wondered if his fellow cubs were about to learn another lesson. Sumin joined their training session the next morning. She bowed respectfully to Hyunwoo, who returned the gesture with a slight smile. Then she turned to face the cubs, and Taeyang saw it immediately. The same quality in her eyes that Hyunwoo possessed. That predator calm, that patient assessment. "Cubs," Hyunwoo said. "This is Cadet Sumin. She will be training with you for the next several months. I expect you to treat her as you would any fellow warrior." Minho stepped forward, his massive form towering over the small human. "With respect, instructor, should she not train with others of her own?" "Size?" Sumin looked up at him with an expression that might have been amusement. "Are you concerned for my safety?" "Yes," Minho said honestly. "We are much larger and stronger than you. We would not want to accidentally hurt you." "That is kind," Sumin said. Her voice was soft, but there was something in it that made Taeyang's ears flatten. "But I will be fine." The morning training began with their usual warm-up exercises. Running laps around the training hall, strength conditioning, flexibility drills. The cubs expected Sumin to fall behind quickly, to struggle with the pace they set. They were wrong. She kept up. Not just for a few minutes, but for the entire hour-long warm-up. While the cubs began to pant and slow, relying on their burst-speed biology that was not designed for sustained effort, Sumin maintained a steady pace. Her breathing stayed controlled. Her form stayed perfect. She did not slow down. "She is still going," one of the cubs whispered in disbelief as they took their break. Across the hall, Sumin continued running laps, apparently unaware that the rest of them had stopped. Hyunwoo watched with an expression that might have been pride. "Humans do not have your burst speed or strength," he said to the cubs. "But we can maintain moderate effort for hours, days if necessary. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion." The cubs stared at the small human as she ran, her steady footfalls echoing through the hall. It had been over an hour, and she showed no signs of slowing. One of the cubs, trying to prove something, rejoined the run. He managed 10 minutes before his muscles began to cramp, his body protesting the prolonged exertion it was not designed for. Sumin ran for another 30 minutes before Hyunwoo finally called her to stop. How? Mino asked her during the break. How can you do that? She smiled, wiping sweat from her face. This is normal for humans. We are endurance specialists. In basic training on Earth, we run 5 kilometers every morning before breakfast. Every morning? Taeyang asked. Every morning, she confirmed. For months. Years, if you continue in service, the cubs exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand something fundamental about humans. Something that went beyond combat skills or weapons. Humans simply did not stop. It was not about wanting to continue or having the will to push through. It was built into their biology, into the very structure of their bodies and minds. The next lesson came during wilderness training. The station maintained a large environmental simulation zone, a multi-level space designed to mimic various planetary conditions. Hyunwoo took them into a forest simulation, a dense environment of artificial trees and undergrowth. Today you hunt, he said. The simulation has released a holographic prey animal. Your task is to track and tag it. It is faster than you and it knows these woods better than you do. You have 6 hours. The cubs split into groups and began the hunt with confidence. They had trained for this their entire lives. Tracking prey was in their blood. They moved through the forest with practiced efficiency, using their keen senses to follow the trail. But the prey was fast, and the trail kept going cold. After 2 hours, most of the cubs had given up and returned to the starting point. Their burst speed biology was not designed for prolonged tracking. They were ambush predators built for short, explosive hunts. Sumin did not return. Hyunwoo sat with the cubs at the starting point, waiting. 3 hours passed, then 4. The cubs began to worry. Should we search for her? Minyo asked. She might be lost. She is not lost, Hyunwoo said calmly. 5 hours. 6 hours. The exercise time limit expired. The cubs were restless now, concerned for the small human who had disappeared into the simulated forest alone. Then, Sumin emerged from the tree line. She was covered in dirt and simulated plant matter. Her clothes were torn in places. But in her hand was the tracking beacon, lit up to show she had successfully tagged the prey. 6 hours, Taeyang said in disbelief. You followed it for 6 hours? Sumin nodded, breathing heavily but smiling. It was fast, but I was patient. Every time it stopped to rest, I got closer. Eventually, it could not run anymore. She handed the beacon to Hyunwoo, who examined it and nodded with approval. This is persistence hunting, Hyunwoo said to the cubs, the oldest form of human hunting. We do not chase prey in a burst of speed. We simply follow it until it cannot run anymore. In Earth's history, humans could track prey for days if necessary. We would follow herds across entire continents, never stopping, never giving up. Minho's claws scraped against the ground. That is not hunting. That is haunting. Yes, Hyunwoo said softly. From the prey's perspective, humans are persistent nightmares. Something that follows you forever. That never stops. That never gives up. No matter how fast you run, no matter where you hide, we keep coming. The cubs looked at Sumin with new eyes. She was half their size, possessed none of their natural weapons or armor, and could not match their speed or strength. But she had succeeded where they had failed because she simply refused to stop trying. That night, the cubs gathered in their common area, and Taeyang voiced what they were all thinking. We cannot compete with them, he said quietly, not in the ways that matter. We are faster and stronger, yes, but they are relentless. They adapt to everything. They turn disadvantages into advantages. They never ever give up. Minho's tail lashed in frustration. Then how do we become better warriors? If humans have such advantages, what hope do we have? We learn from them, Taeyang said. We learn to think like they think, to adapt like they adapt, to endure like they endure, another cub growled. You want us to become more human? I want us to survive, Taeyang replied. And if humans have survived everything their death world threw at them, then their methods work. The conversation continued late into the night. They discussed what they had learned, what they had witnessed. They talked about Earth and the horrors of a planet that tried to kill its own children. They wondered how humans remained sane when they carried such capacity for violence and endurance. The medical bay smelled of antiseptic and fear. The 7 Vakesh cubs sat on examination tables, their massive forms making the human-sized furniture seem toy-like. Jiwon moved between them with practiced efficiency, running scanners over their bodies and checking their vital signs. She was human like their instructor, though she stood even shorter than Hyunwoo. Her hands moved with gentle confidence as she worked. "You're all physically fine," she said, her voice carrying a soft accent. "No injuries, no exposure to toxins. But your stress hormones are extremely elevated." Minho's claws scraped against the metal table. "We are not stressed. We are vakesh. We do not fear." Ji-won looked at him with patient eyes. "Your biology says otherwise. You witnessed violence. That affects everyone, regardless of species." She paused, then added quietly, "Even humans." Taeyang watched her carefully. "You knew. About Instructor Hyunwoo. About what he can do." It was not a question. Ji-won's expression confirmed it. "Yes," she said simply. "I know what he was. What he still is when necessary. What was he?" Taeyang pressed. "Before he came here?" Ji-won hesitated, then pulled up a holographic display. "I can show you his public service record. The rest is classified, but this much is available." The display showed a younger Hyunwoo in military uniform. The text beside his image was sparse, but what was there made Taeyang's blood run cold. Earth Defense Force, Rim Wars, Combat Operations. Survival rate of his unit, 43%. His personal survival rate, 100%. Confirmed hostile eliminations, classified. The Rim Wars, Minho whispered. That was 15 years ago, when humanity first encountered hostile species. "Yes," Ji-won said. "Hyunwoo served for 8 years. He saw combat on 12 different worlds." She closed the display. "When the war ended, he left the military. He said he wanted to teach instead of kill. He came here to this station to train young warriors from across the galaxy." "Why?" another cub asked. "Why would an apex predator choose to teach prey?" The words came out before the cub could stop them. Ji-won's expression hardened. "You still do not understand," she said. "Humans are not predators because we enjoy killing. We are predators because we are very, very good at surviving. There is a difference." She left them to think about that. The cubs returned to their quarters in silence. They should have been celebrating their survival, boasting about their courage in the face of danger. Instead, they gathered in Taeyang's room and began searching the galactic network for information about humans. What they found disturbed them more than the attack had. Earth. Classification: Death World. Atmospheric oxygen percentage: 21%. Considered toxic to most species. Gravity, 1 standard, considered high. Native predator species estimated over 300,000. Native prey species that survived to sapience: 1. Humans, Taeyang read aloud, evolved on a planet where everything wanted to kill them. Their evolutionary advantage was not strength, speed, or armor. It was adaptability and endurance. They found combat footage from the Rim Wars. Humans fighting against species with natural advantages. Humans who should have been easy prey but instead became nightmares to their enemies. The footage showed human soldiers pursuing hostile forces for days without stopping. It showed humans adapting to alien environments within hours. It showed humans taking injuries that should have been fatal and continuing to fight. Persistence predators. Another cub read from a xenobiology text. Humans evolved from persistence hunters who would track prey for days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They do not have the burst speed of most predators, but they never stop. They never give up. Minho pulled up another file. It says here that human bone structure is designed to absorb impact. Their muscles are built for endurance rather than power. Their sweat glands allow them to regulate temperature better than almost any species. They can run in heat that would kill us. "Look at this," Taeyang said, his voice shaking slightly. He had found a video from Earth, an ancient recording called a documentary. It showed early humans hunting an animal called a deer. The humans did not chase it down in a burst of speed. They simply followed it. For hours, for days. The deer would run and the humans would follow at a steady pace. The deer would rest and the humans would keep coming. Eventually, the deer collapsed from exhaustion, and the humans, barely tired, killed it with simple tools. "They do not stop," Taeyang whispered. "They just do not stop." The cubs spent hours reading, watching, learning. They discovered that humans had no mating season, meaning they could reproduce year-round. They learned that humans could eat an enormous variety of foods, including things that were poisonous to most species. They read about human endurance records, about humans who ran for days, who climbed impossible heights, who survived in environments that should have killed them, and they learned about human warfare. "They do not fight for honor," Minho said, reading from a military analysis. "They fight to win. They use deception, traps, ambush, and any advantage available. They do not care about fair combat. They care about survival. Another cub found footage of human special forces training. The exercises were horrifying in their brutality. Humans pushed themselves beyond what should have been possible, and when they failed, they simply tried again. And again, and again. What kind of species does this to themselves? The cub asked. The kind that evolved on a death world, Taeyang answered quietly. The kind that had to become apex predators or go extinct. 3 days after the attack, Taeyang worked up the courage to approach Hyunwoo. Their instructor had resumed teaching as if nothing had happened. He was patient, gentle, and seemingly harmless again. But Taeyang could not unsee what he had witnessed. Every time he looked at Hyunwoo, he saw the blood, the efficient violence, the cold calculation in those human eyes. Instructor, Taeyang said after class, may I ask you something? Hyunwoo looked at him with mild curiosity. Of course. The other day when you fought those mercenaries. What we saw, is that what all humans can do? Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured for Taeyang to walk with him. They moved through the station corridors, past aliens of dozens of species going about their daily lives. Do you know why most species fear death worlds? Hyunwoo asked. Because they are dangerous, Taeyang answered. No, Hyunwoo said, because the things that evolve on death worlds have to be more dangerous than the world itself. Earth tried to kill humans for millions of years. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. Everything on our planet wanted us dead. He stopped and looked at Taeyang directly. We did not have claws, so we made knives. We did not have armor, so we learned to dodge and weave. We did not have speed, so we learned patience. We did not have venom, so we learned to make poisons. We took every disadvantage and turned it into a weapon. But you, Taeyang said, his voice barely above a whisper, the way you fought. That was not normal even for humans. You are special, yes? Hyunwoo smiled, but it was a sad smile. I was trained by my government to be very good at killing. But the capacity for what you saw? That is in every human. We are all apex predators, Taeyang. Some of us just have more practice than others. He started walking again and Taeyang followed. I came here to teach, Hyunwoo continued, because I was tired of killing. I wanted to show young warriors from across the galaxy that strength is not just about physical power. It is about adapting, surviving, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. But you are still a predator, Taeyang said. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed. I will always be a predator, but I choose to use that nature to teach rather than to hunt. They reached the training hall. Hyunwoo turned to face Taeyang fully. You asked me a question with your eyes, even if your mouth did not speak it, Hyunwoo said. You want to know why I seem like Apex clad in human skin? Taeyang's ears flattened. Yes, instructor. Hyunwoo's expression was gentle, but his eyes were ancient. Because on Earth, everything wanted to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, the diseases, even other humans. We learned to kill back. We learned to adapt, to endure, to survive no matter what. That is what being human means. He placed a hand on Taeyang's shoulder. The gesture was light, friendly, but Taeyang could feel the strength in those fingers. You and your people are warriors by nature, Hyunwoo said. You were born with weapons and armor. Humans are warriors by necessity. We were born with nothing but our minds and our refusal to die. Which do you think is more dangerous? Taeyang had no answer. That night he lay in his bunk and thought about his instructor's words. Around him, the other cubs slept fitfully, their dreams troubled by what they had witnessed and learned. Taeyang stared at the ceiling and understood something profound and terrifying. They had come to this station to learn from warriors. They had expected to be taught by beings like themselves, predators who understood strength and honor. Instead, they had been given a human, a species that looked like prey but fought like nightmares, a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain with nothing but determination and refusal to give up. And tomorrow, that human would teach them again, would stand before them with his gentle voice and patient manner, would guide them through training exercises with careful instruction, and they would listen, because now they knew the truth. The training hall smelled of sweat and frustration. 7 young Vakesh stood in formation, their massive forms towering over the human instructor who walked between them. Each cub stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur that rippled over natural armor plating. Their claws gleamed in the artificial light, retracted but always present. They were born predators from a world where strength meant survival. Hyunwoo moved through their ranks with quiet steps. He stood barely 6 feet tall, his frame lean and unimpressive next to the alien warriors. His dark hair was cut short, his features unremarkable. He wore simple training clothes that did nothing to hide how soft he appeared compared to his students. The Vakesh cubs watched him with barely concealed contempt. "Again," Yunwu said, his voice calm. "Show me the defensive stance." The cubs moved through the forms, but their hearts were not in it. Taeyang, the youngest of the group, executed the movements with precision, but even he felt the exercise was beneath them. They were Vakesh. They had claws that could tear through steel, natural armor that could stop most projectiles, and strength that exceeded nearly every species in the known galaxy. What could this weak, clawless human possibly teach them? "Your stance is too wide, Minho," Hyunwoo said, stopping beside one of the larger cubs. "If someone strikes from your left, you cannot pivot fast enough." Minho's ears flattened against his skull. "With respect, instructor, my armor can withstand the strike. I do not need to dodge, and if your armor fails, it will not fail. I am Vakesh." Hyunwoo did not argue. He simply nodded and continued his inspection. Taeyang watched the exchange and felt something stir in his chest. The other cubs mocked their human instructor when he was not listening. They called him soft-skinned, prey walker, and worse. But Taeyang had noticed something in their instructor's eyes that troubled him. When Hyunwoo watched them train, his gaze held a quality that Taeyang recognized from the old hunters on his homeworld. It was the look of a predator measuring prey. The thought made no sense, so Taeyang pushed it away. The training session continued for another hour. The cubs moved through combat drills, weapons practice, and conditioning exercises. Hyunwoo observed, occasionally correcting a stance or suggesting a more efficient movement. The cubs tolerated his instruction but did not truly listen. How could they? He was human. He had no claws, no fangs, no armor. On their world, something like him would be prey. The alarm shattered the routine. Red lights flooded the training hall, pulsing in time with a harsh klaxon. Hyunwoo's head snapped toward the door, his entire demeanor changing in an instant. The casual instructor vanished, replaced by something else entirely. "Into the corner," he said, his voice cutting through the alarm. "Now," the cubs hesitated. Minho growled low in his throat. "We are warriors." "We do not hide." "You are cubs," Hyunwoo said, and there was steel in his voice that had not been there before. "And you will follow orders. Move." Something in his tone made them obey. They moved to the corner of the training hall, their instincts screaming at them to fight, to defend, to prove themselves. But that voice had carried command that bypassed their pride. The doors to the training hall exploded inward. 6 figures stormed through the smoke and debris. They wore combat armor covered in weapons and gear. Their species varied, but their intent was clear. Mercenaries, pirates, hunters who preyed on the weak and valuable. Young Vakesh cubs would fetch a fortune in the illegal fighting rings that operated in the darker corners of the galaxy. Well, the lead mercenary said, his voice distorted through his helmet. "Look at this. A whole litter of them and only one soft human to guard them." Hyunwoo stood between the mercenaries and his students. He held no weapon. His stance seemed relaxed, almost casual. "You should leave," he said simply. The mercenaries laughed. One of them, a massive Kravik with natural armor thicker than the Vakesh cubs, stepped forward. "Or what, human? You going to stop us? You got no claws, no armor, nothing? You are nothing. Last chance," Hyunwoo said. The Kravik raised his weapon and everything changed. Hyunwoo moved. The cubs had never seen anything move like that. One moment their instructor stood still. The next he was inside the Kravik's guard. His hand struck twice, too fast to follow. The massive alien collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. Hyunwoo caught it before it hit the ground and fired 3 times in rapid succession. 3 mercenaries fell. The remaining 2 opened fire, but Hyunwoo was already moving. He did not run, he flowed. Every step was precise, every movement calculated. He used the fallen Kravik's body as cover, then rolled and came up firing. Another mercenary dropped. The last one tried to retreat. Hyunwoo pursued. The cubs watched in absolute silence. This was not fighting as they knew it. This was not the clash of warriors, the test of strength against strength. This was something else entirely. This was hunting. This was killing. This was efficient, brutal, and utterly terrifying. Hyunwoo caught the final mercenary at the door. He did not use the gun. He dropped it and moved in close. The mercenary tried to fight back, tried to use his superior size and armor. It did not matter. Hyunwoo moved around him like water, striking points on the armor that the cubs had not known were weak points. The mercenary fell, and Hyunwoo's hand came down on his neck with surgical precision. Then it was over. Hyunwoo stood among the bodies, breathing steady and controlled. Not a single scratch marked his skin. He looked down at his hands for a moment, and the cubs saw something cross his face. Regret, perhaps, or maybe just fatigue. He turned to face them, and for a moment the cubs saw their instructor clearly for the first time. His eyes were calm. His hands were steady, and there was blood on his training clothes. "Are any of you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentle again. None of them could speak. Taeyang's mouth was dry. His claws had extended without his conscious thought, a fear response he had not experienced since he was very small. Around him, the other cubs stood frozen, their ears flat, their eyes wide. Minho finally found his voice. What are you?" Hyunwoo looked at him for a long moment. Then he walked to the wall and pressed the emergency comm. "Security, this is Training Hall 7. We have a breach. Multiple hostiles down. Cubs are safe. Send medical." He did not answer Minho's question. Station security arrived within minutes. They found the cubs huddled together in the corner, still silent, still watching their instructor. They found Hyunwoo sitting against the wall, his eyes closed, looking for all the world like a tired teacher after a long day. They found 6 bodies cooling on the floor. Taeyang could not stop staring at his instructor. The question formed in his mind, terrible and compelling, and he knew it would haunt him until he found an answer. What was that? What did we just see? Why does something that looks like prey fight like the apex? The other cubs were thinking the same thing. They had come to this station to learn from legendary warriors. They had expected to be taught by beings like themselves, predators who understood strength and honor and the glory of combat. Instead, they had been given a human instructor. A soft, weak, clawless human who they had dismissed and mocked. A human who had just killed 6 armed mercenaries with his bare hands and did not even appear. Winded, Taeyang watched as medical personnel checked Hyunwoo for injuries and found none. He watched as his instructor gave his report to security with calm, professional efficiency. He watched as the bodies were removed and the training hall was cleared. And he could not stop the question from circling in his mind, growing louder with each repetition. Why is he apex clad in human skin?